going on, y'all? This Pito back with another book review. Today we doing Eve's book, her memoir, Who's That Girl? This book was so entertaining from beginning to end. I did the audio book with this one. I did it on Audible. This book was so fucking entertainment. If you grew up in the time frame when Eve was coming out, during the time of the Ruff Ryders, during the time of beginning of Eminem, like that era of hip hop is my favorite era of hip hop. And listening to so many stories, how she breaks certain things down and how she ran into the Mace at a strip club and how she met her husband doing the gumball races. There's just so many different dope ass stories in this book. This is probably one of the most entertaining books that I've read, and I absolutely positively love this book. If you have read it, let me know what you think in the comment section. This your boy Pito back with another book review. Let's fucking get it. So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl? She talked about her early days as a dancer and how she would always try to get ahead of that curve when she became a rapper, because she knew that people was going to try to use that against her. But as long as she was the one that told people that story, nobody could use that as a weapon. And I thought that was a very entertaining way to go about letting people know ahead of time before you even get to that. Like, I already know you already know what it is. This is what I did. This is what it is. Just keep it pushing. Another thing that I thought was hilarious about her early dancing days was how she would tell people, like, look, I'm gonna make a deal for you. As she's topless, let me spit for you. And if you don't like my bars, then I'll give you a free lap dance. And she said most of the times people like what she spit. And I just think that's like crazy, because I couldn't imagine, just FYI, I'm not a fan of strip clubs. I've been to one strip club my entire life. It's just not for me. It's just not my thing. But I know plenty of people that strip. I know plenty of people that work in strip clubs. I know people that's involved in it heavily. So I'm not saying this to go against stripping at all, but I'm just saying it's not my thing. But I couldn't imagine being in a strip club trying to see some girls and she like, look, let me spit for you. And I don't know, that's just like a hilarious visual to me personally. But she did say that, and she said most of the times when she did, people found it entertaining and she didn't have to give them a lap dance. And she also stated that she was probably the worst stripper ever. And she was saying, like, no matter how much she tried, how much she was there, she just really felt like that wasn't her element. She didn't like it. She didn't like nothing about it, but she was just trying to make some money, just like most people that strip do. That's the reason why most of them are there, just trying to get, their bills paid. So another thing that she talked about in her book, Who's That Girl? Eve's book, she talks about how when she was dancing, Mace came into the club, amongst his heyday when he was with Bad Boy. And everybody was telling, like, yo, Mace here, you should go rap for him. She go rap for him. So she was like, man, I'm not trying to rap for Mace. I don't even know who that is. Like, she wasn't worried about it at all. So she said she went over there. And a lot of y'all probably already heard this story, but I'm just now really catching wind of it because I just read her book. But she was like, Mace was like, so what's your name? And she's like, why you want to know my name? And she was like, Mace was super cool and asking all these personal questions. And she was getting an attitude like, why you asking me all these questions? Like, what do none of that matter? So she was like, well, what do you really want to do in life? And he was kind of like, man, whatever. So he was like, no, seriously, what do you want to do? And she was like, I want to rap. So he was like, all right, well, let me hear something. So she spit for him, and Mace was like, say something. I want to hear something else. I want to hear something else. I want to hear something else. So after she finished rapping for him, he was like, you can't be in this club no more. Like, you can't be here if that's what you're going to do. You should really chase that dream. He was like, look, we should hang out. And she was like, I'm not leaving with you. And he was like, nah, come on. Like, you should go hang out with me. He was like, only way I hang out with you is if all my girlfriends come. And he was like, that's cool. Like, what dude wouldn't want to be with that? Like a bunch of strippers hanging out with them outside. You got money. That's the whole reason why you go to the club, is to get the girls. So she said they ended up hanging out and they had a good time. And he really gave her some advice. Like, yo, if you're really going to do this rapping shit, you got to quit that and really get it your all. But you got the skill set. And no matter where she went, whoever she ran across, she always had that same energy from people. Like, you really need to do this rapping thing if you're going to do it, because you definitely got the skill set for it. But I just thought that was real respectful. I thought that was real dope and real honest of Mace to really give somebody advice at that time and being so cool and player about it, and not trying to make it about a super sexual thing or just try to hit or just try to disregard or ignore somebody in that time, in that space, because you see it happen all the time where dudes just be like, yeah, whatever, anyway, whatever. But he was actually thorough about it, and it just made me have a little bit more respect for Mace. You feel me? So another thing in Eve's book, Who's That Girl? She talks about earlier when she was younger and her relationship with Sky Storch. and how that relationship really helped her see a lot of different things and really see like how the Roots record, and being in that arena and being in that space really let her know like it was possible for her to be able to accomplish what she wanted to accomplish. And this goes into one thing that I'm always talking about with representation, like being able to be in certain arenas and seeing certain things really helps you understand that you are capable of doing a lot of different things. And her having that relationship and developing that space with Scott Scorch and seeing the Roots and everybody doing their thing, recording in the studio, let her know that it's feasible, it's plausible, it's something that she could possibly do. And even like a lot of times when I'm talking to fighters, I tell them too, like your environment matters. Who you're around, what you're around, and what you see is capable and possible, so you be able to push yourself to the next limits. So that was definitely another thing that I thought was amazing in this book, her relationships that she had early on before she became the star that she really was. One of the most funny things that she talked about in this book was her relationship with Dr. Dre. And I always think that it's entertaining hearing people be honest about how they feel. The quickest way somebody can lose being cool with me is when they're not being honest, and I can tell that they're fronting or trying to put on this facade like you don't have real emotions or nothing ever bothers you or anything like that. I love when people are vulnerable and honest. And that's one thing she was when she was talking about Dr. Dre and how the whole situation played out in a funny way, because she really was playing herself early on when because she signed the Aftermath. She got the deal. Dr. Dre flew out to LA, put up in her apartment, put her in a condo, got her own bank account, had money coming in, and gave her own car. But she wasn't recording. And she would just be in these studio sessions and be around all these people, but she was not recording. So she started getting frustrated, like, yo, what is going on? Why am I in these spaces, but I'm not doing any work? Like, I want to be I want to record. I want to be on these songs. I just don't want to be around people making the songs. So she was saying like, so she started getting so frustrated. She started showing up to studio sessions. Like, when am I going to record? When is it my turn? When am I going to get on? And it was so funny because she was doing it so much that's why she got dropped from Aftermath, because they got tired of her just showing up to these spaces and trying to get on everybody's song and trying to basically put in the work, which you got to respect, but you kind of also understand, like, but regardless of how anybody feel or how anybody see it or how anybody view it, it worked out to her favor, because that would eventually led her to get on with Ruff Ryders, her being dropped from Aftermath. But that whole desire to put in the work is what led her to her next blessing, if that makes sense. But it definitely was funny how she was out there pissing everybody off, and even how that affected her relationship with Dre moving forward in future projects and stuff like that. And she talks about it in the book a lot, how she just was like, fuck Dr. Dre, even when they was working together, even when they was recording, even when they was making Grammy songs, she still was on that time. Like, I'm gonna make this motherfucker pay for really dissing me the way he did, even though he really didn't, but kind of, sort of, I understand it. But it definitely is a funny ass, interesting story. And it's very, very entertaining. Oh, and one of the main reasons why she was not recording when she was out there, because he was purely and solely focused on Eminem. And you can't even get mad at Dre for that, because it's Eminem. And that's one of the reasons why my introduction is the way it is, because you just don't be knowing what's going on behind the scenes with a lot of stuff that's going on. So the reason why he wasn't really pushing for Eve's career at the time, because he was so focused on getting Eminem out, which turned out to be a blessing for him and Eve. So wild stories, man. Crazy, crazy stories in this book. So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl, she goes into the Dr. Dre situation again, and how once she signed the Ruff Ryders, or once she blew up, Ruff Ryders was on Interscope. And, you know, Dr. Dre, Eminem, all of them was on Interscope, even though she had this previous beef with him. So they came to her like, look, we want you to work with Dr. Dre on this song. And she was like, hell no, I'm not working with Dr. Dre. Like, so then she kind of was like, okay, no, I will. So she was like, I'm going to show this motherfucker what he passed up on. So when they go to the studio session there, she's being a complete bitch to Dr. Dre. Like, I don't like that beat. Fuck this beat. I don't like that. I'm going to do it this way. So they basically argued in the studio session, all because she was mad and being spiteful behind what happened previously with their relationship. And for her to even be able to vocalize this and really talk about this to the level that she was really entertaining and very refreshing. Cause these rappers be lying so much, bro. These rappers are always trying to make it seem a certain way when it's not. So her keeping it real, telling the truth of how she really felt, what she really was thinking, I really fucks with the honesty in this book. I really do. So they end up working together on the first song they worked together on was the song with Gwen Stefani, and it ended up winning a Grammy. And it's crazy because it was so much hostility in the studio when they was recording it. And that's what she said. One thing she appreciated about Dr. Dre is he literally brought out the best in her, and that's one thing that she always will appreciate. The only thing that she always really banged with and really loved about Dr. Dre, even though she was being a bitch to him a lot of times, it really brought out the best in her. So that was another amazing part to this book. So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl, she also talked about being sabotaged for the Roots song and how she tried to, she wrote on it, Erykah Badu on it as well, and she never got her Grammy. And she was saying like she tried to show up to the video shoot, but somebody quote unquote gave her the wrong address to where the video shoot was at, and she ended up going to the wrong location, so that's why she wasn't in the video. And she never got her credit for the song, and she was really highly upset about that. But eventually down the line, she ended up getting her Grammy and getting vindicated and getting everything in its proper place. But initially she was real hurt and salty about that, not getting the credit and not getting her Grammy and not being in the video, especially at the time when she really needed that to help boost her career. But it all ended up working out at the end because she eventually got her Grammy and got the credit that she deserves for writing on that song. I love the song You Got Me by the Roots. Philly, what up? So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl, she talked about how she finally got her deal with Ruff Ryders and how she got a call to come out there. They had to freestyle in front of all these people, and she basically had to battle, and she was like, okay, cool, whatever. So she goes there in Yonkers or whatever, and the whole Ruff Ryders in there, everybody, and they was like, you got to battle. So she was like, she ended up battling like Dragon, Infrared, like a bunch of different people that was on the label, basically battling everybody. And she said she kind of blacked out as she's freestyling, as she's battling, and stuff like this. I wish you could have video of it so you could actually see or actually be there in the moments, because that was just amazing, like story to tell, how she was like basically fighting for her life amongst all these dudes and battling. And she said as she blacked out and she kind of came to towards the end, and she said she felt like a she felt like a Shaolin monk that just got finished defeating all her enemies. It was just standing there like, oh, some real gangster shit. And I really just appreciate that moment, because so many times you had these moments, and I'm one of them, that just kind of, not necessarily fold, but kind of like don't step up as much as you know you could in these moments. And the fact that she blacked out and actually executed and killed it, and the fact that she's a girl, and the fact that she was like 17, 18 at the time. So it's just amazing to hear these stories of her just going amongst the wolves and coming out, cut up, bloodied up, but still standing on her own shit as a woman, which I really thought was amazing. I really enjoyed this book, if you cannot tell. And I want y'all to read it. If you haven't read it, Who's That Girl by Eve, definitely go get it, cop it. I'm telling you, it's a great book to read, very entertaining, especially if you're into hip hop. So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl, she talks about the phone call that she received from Jay-Z when she did ready to put out her debut album. And I saw this story going around on YouTube a few times, and I feel like people's intent was a little bit more malicious than the way she told the story. And I get it, people be trying to get clicks and views, but she said Jay-Z called her and was like, a lot of women ain't selling like that right now, so don't get your hopes up. And she was saying like it really kind of put a damper on her mood, like that he would call her and tell her some shit like that, like, I'm gonna prove a point, I'm gonna show you that, I'm a sell. So when she did release and she did drop, she ended up going double platinum, and she kind of felt like that was her vindication to really, throw a jab at Jay about, like, she didn't literally say it verbally, but in her mind, that was her jab at Jay, that she went double platinum. And I feel like, I could be wrong, this is just my personal interpretation of what she was saying, but it just sounded like Jay wasn't trying to get her hopes up too high, just in case if she was disappointed that she wouldn't quit. But she didn't take it like that. She took it as if like, nigga, I'm gonna show you who the fuck I am. And she ended up going double platinum with her debut with Ruff Ryders. And you forget how many albums Eve was selling. You forget how big she was. And I feel like that's a problem in our community a lot of times, where with the older rappers or people that's previous generations, you kind of forget how big and how massive of an impact a lot of these people had. But a lot of videos that I did see, they were trying to make it seem like Jay-Z was trying to shit on her, trying to get her to quit and stuff like that, which I don't think was the case, but you just never fully know. But it definitely was a entertaining read where she definitely got a one up on this particular situation, because Jay definitely was wrong. She definitely went double platinum and sold them numbers. I believe it was double or triple. I'm not 100% sure, but she ended up doing numbers way more than Jay thought she would. So that was definitely another entertaining story in this book. Another thing that she talked about in this book, in Eve's book, Who's That Girl, which I thought was crazy, was how after she sold so many albums and so many records, I think she was on her third or fourth album, I'm not 100% sure, but she felt like she wasn't getting paid what she deserved to be paid for selling so many records. So she started, trying to figure out ways to get help and trying to figure it out. And one of the people that she went to help for was Suge Knight. She said she seen him at an event and everybody was scared of him. She was like, I want to talk to Suge Knight. So she went to Suge Knight and told her security to go. Her security wouldn't do it. So she went up to him herself and was like, can we have dinner? And he was like, yeah, we could definitely have dinner. So they ended up going to dinner, and she ended up explaining her situation to Suge Knight. Like, yo, I need help, man. They're not paying me. The negotiations is not going how I want them to go. And she said, Suge Knight was like, all right, I'm bet. And this was also another way for her to get at Dr. Dre, because of Suge, Dr. Dre relationship, even with Interscope and Jimmy Iovine. So it became a whole mess. So she was saying like Suge actually went up to Interscope and met with them on the behalf of her. And she said that completely changed and shifted everything. And if she could do it all over again, she wouldn't have, because it really fucked her up in the long run with Interscope. But she definitely said that Suge stood up and went up there for her. And she wasn't there, but she could just imagine watching Suge walk in there and seeing how pissed everybody was, especially being able to piss off Dre one more time because of their previous situation. Which is funny, her being so honest and vulnerable and transparent about the situation. And she said, like, after that happened, it was never the same with Interscope. They end up in like a 15-year legal battle trying to get certain albums released, and eventually she would get dropped from Interscope. And she asked for the release, and when she did get released, she was grateful that they did let her go, but it did turn into other things because she didn't understand how significant at the time the labels were, how much work they were spending behind her, until she released her own album. And like 15 years later, and how much legwork she had to do on her own. And she just didn't necessarily appreciate or didn't necessarily understand how much of an impact the labels had on pushing them albums, getting them albums out and stuff like that. She just wasn't being compensated and didn't have the freedom enough to do what she wanted to do once she was on them labels. But when she started doing everything on her own 15 years later, she definitely understood. And sometimes it's like that. Like her career was in reverse. So she was always on. She was always the number one person. So later on, when she tried to release music on her own, she had to kind of like start over, do the smaller clubs, do the smaller gigs, do all the legwork herself. But she kind of said there was some enjoyment to that. There's a lot more freedom, but just a lot more work. But yeah, that was definitely a crazy story. She pulling the Suge card and getting him to go up in the Interscope like Cube did. Not saying that he did what Cube did, but it's just a funny story. So in Eve's book, Who's That Girl? She talked about our Hollywood encounters and how hilarious they are. She talked about how she took Captain America, Chris Evans, to the strip club. She took him to Magic City in Atlanta. They was here shooting, I believe, Captain America. I'm not sure which one. And she was shooting Barbershop, I believe. And they hung out. They met at the bar one night, and she took him to Magic City. And she was saying it was so weird because Chris Evans, and she was with Anthony Mackie as well. Like, Chris Evans is so respectful and so sweet and so like innocent to some extent. And she was like, it was such an awkward experience. She also talked about how Daniel Craig punched her in the face. They was on a set of a movie, and she was trying to get the dog out the car on the set. And Daniel Craig kind of reached for the dog, and ended up punching her in the face, and her nose started bleeding real bad. And she was saying like, they was like, cut. She was like, nah, just use the scene, use it. Because she knew that she was not going to be able to replicate that level of authenticity of how her being in pain like that and the blood and everything like that. So she wanted to use that moment. And they did. They ended up shooting the scene. I forgot the name of the movie that she was in with Daniel Craig, but if you have seen it, put it in the comment section. But she said later on that night, Daniel Craig sent her a bottle of champagne and was like, yo, you a fucking soldier. Like, you really did that shit, and I'm sorry for punching you. in the face. And she also talked about Sean Penn and how she was throwing a party and she invited everybody to the after party to her house, but she ended up getting a DUI on the way home. And when she got that DUI, she called her friend at the house like, look, all these people about to come, but I'm getting this DUI. I need you to call and get me out of jail. And her friend was like, well, there's only one person here, this guy named Sean. And she was saying her friend from Philly didn't know who the fuck Sean Penn was. So Sean Penn came to the jail to try to bail her out. But she refused because she didn't want to leave with Sean Penn and see that Sean Penn bailed her out and people thought they was dating. So that was like some wild stories that she had. Oh, she also talked about one of her big hip hop friends tried to take her to the Church of Scientology, and how when she got there, she just had this crazy ass feeling like, don't eat nothing, don't drink nothing, just get the fuck up out of here. And she was mad that she even got caught up in a situation, that she was even there. And she said she went there and it was just such a weird ass experience. And she was saying there was a lot of celebrities there of Scientology, and I don't know a thing about Scientology at all. I don't know like what it represents. I don't know what they believe in. Obviously, it must be science over like spirituality. I'm assuming. If you do know what Scientology is, or if you can educate me in some way, shape, or form, put it in the comment section. Let me know, because I have no fucking idea, nothing about Scientology. But apparently, they're powerful. The Church of Scientology. Another thing that Eve talked about in her book, Who's That Girl? She talked about the importance of black people going to see black doctors. And this is not me trying to get on a race card or anything like that, but it's so true, because I've had plenty of experiences, and no matter how many books I read of black celebrities, they all, Fat Joe had a similar story. Like, these women of these minorities get treated so differently in a lot of these different environments with some of these doctors. But she was saying like she kept having all of these pains, and they told her that she had like 2 or 3 fibroids, and she ended up going to a black female doctor, and they ended up finding like 15 of them. And how she was just being so mistreated by certain doctors, and they were just kind of ignoring what she was really going through and what she was experiencing. And she was saying once they removed all 14, 15 of them fibroids, one of them was like massive, she started having periods that wasn't painful. Like, it was like perfectly fine after that. And it's just another story that you hear of, like, especially black women going to see these doctors and having these experiences of like just being treated unfairly and not being properly diagnosed or properly taken care of. So it's just another one of them sad stories that you hear that's unfortunate. And it's also just let you know the importance of representation again, and also having proper representation when it comes to these doctors, lawyers, judges, everything, because sometimes it just get treated unfairly, and it's not right, but it's kind of the world we live in these days, unfortunately. Another thing in Eve's book, Who's That Girl? She talks about DMX, Jadakiss, the Ruff Ryders, and how much respect, how much love they had for her, and how they was always there for her. They was always supportive, even situations like Mike Tyson, how they was really standing up for her, even when Tyson was like trying to kidnap her. She even talked about when the Suge Knight situation, DNY called her and was like, yo, you got to get away from Suge Knight. And she listened to him, and she even called Suge Knight and was like, yo, I got to stay away from you. They told me I got to get away. And he was like, yeah, if you was my sister, I'd do the same thing. She also talked about how DMX was like kind of snapping on a lot of different people when he was tired or when he wasn't getting enough sleep. So the only person that could actually wake DMX up and really get to him was Eve, because he would treat her with so much respect. He wouldn't snap on her, wouldn't trip on her really at all. And just how the Ruff Ryders really was holding her down. The environment really put her in position to flourish and really become the person she was. And she really gave DMX, Jadakiss, Style, Chic, Dragon, Swiss Beats, everybody they flowers in this book. And it's just great to hear that these men was really supporting her in this space, because you hear so many other stories. You hear so many times that story go other ways. And she even said that they even gave her the freedom to be the artist that she was. And she knew other women that was in competition with her didn't have the same situation. They had to rap about sex. They had to make everything sexual and rap about these things because of the environments they was in. But the Ruff Ryders really held her down, and it really made me fuck with them even more, even though I've always fucked with the Ruff Ryders. Jadakiss has always been my favorite rapper, even when I was a kid, even when we used to be arguing on the block who was better, Jadakiss or Jay-Z. I always was riding with Jadakiss. To this day, like, I still fucks with the Ruff Ryders and the Lox. And I always knew that I was going to meet DMX one day, even though I never did. I just always had that feeling that I was going to meet him one day. And rest in peace, DMX. But she really was bigging up the Ruff Ryders and really giving them niggas their flowers, which it makes you really appreciate and look at that situation a lot more transparently. It's just an amazing situation that she had with them. So another thing that Eve talked about in this book was meeting her husband, Maximilian, I believe his name is, and how this story was crazy. He throws the gumball drop races where they get all the exotic cars, all the millionaires and billionaires around the world, and they basically travel around the world and racing these cars, these most exotic cars. So Eve, as I told y'all, she had a DUI. So when you travel into these different countries, certain people trip on your DUI. You got to have like an excuse to travel to these different countries. So the DUI that she had, she was in Canada. She said she was with 2 white girls in a Bentley GT drop, I believe that's what she said. And they looking at them like, who the fuck is these black girls, these 2 white girls in this Bentley GT? So she tried to go through the Canadian cross and they pulled up her information, but it was like, yo, you can't go in because you got this DUI, and the excuse that you got for this DUI is expired. So her Max at the time pulls up and like, what's going on? I'm gonna try to figure it out. I'm gonna try to help you. And they wasn't going for it. They wasn't flying it. So Max, she said even a couple of sheiks pulled up and they exotics and they couldn't even help her. That's how much Canada was tripping about this DUI. They wouldn't let her in. So she said Max called like the sheriff or the deputy, somebody in charge of everybody over there in Canada. I don't know how the police system work. And he tells her to go to another exit, another police entrance where there's no computers and nothing like that. It's in the middle of nowhere. So she like, I'm following these millionaires in this Bentley GT with these 2 white girls. They think that I'm drug trafficking. And we go to this place and they looking at him like, yo, who the fuck is these people? So Max told her to take off everything gumball so they won't know that it's a gumball thing. And she forgot that she had a gumball thing on her wrist. So the guy was like, are you out here for the gumball? She was like, no. And the cop was like, well, what's that on your wrist? And she was like, oh shit, I forgot. She was like, oh, we just picked it up off the ground. We saw him throw it on the ground. We put it on. And it's just funny as hell that how she met her husband is smuggling her into Canada and trying to get her through. It's just funny, man. Like, you just never know when, where, or how you're going to meet somebody. And I can't wait to meet my wife, however the hell that's going to happen or however it's going to play out. But yeah, whenever I meet my wife, sneak me into Canada, some shit, and I'm rocking with you. Nah, but that was just another funny story that I thought, a crazy story about this book. That wraps this book up. This is a conclusion of the book. Who is that girl, Eve? This book was amazing. This book was entertaining. This book was funny as hell. If you have read this book, please let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you thought. Let me know how you feel about my breakdown of the book. Let me know if you thought it was entertaining. Tell me some things I need to work on. Y'all need to communicate with me this whole time. My phone ain't been plugged in. Ain't that a bitch? Damn it.